Groupies in the 1970s were part of rock and roll at a key point in its history, and when it was all over, they took their memories with them. Here's what happened next for some of the most legendary Band-Aids. Among the musicians and hangers-on who frequented popular Los Angeles haunts like the Whiskey A Go-Go and the Rainbow Bar and Grill in the early 70s, Sable Shields, who went by the name Sable Starr, was referred to as a baby groupie. Using a fake ID to gain entry to the shows, the underage star had relationships with the much older David Bowie, Johnny Thunders of the New York Dolls, and Iggy Pop, who had a particularly bad reputation in the music world. Starr considered her encounter with Randy California of Spirit to be the loss of her virginity. She was 12 years old at the time. Starr eventually tired of the rock and roll world and moved out of Los Angeles to the relatively quiet Reno, Nevada. She worked there at a local casino for at least the final 16 years of her life, dying from brain cancer in 2009 at the age of 51. At the age of 15, Connie Hamzy, a resident of Little Rock, Arkansas, arrived hours early to a Steppenwolf concert because her mother didn't want to deal with traffic and parking around showtime. Hamzy met the band's drummer Jerry Edmonton backstage, and he exploited her in what would be the first of many backstage hookups for the teenage Hamzy.
I was determined to become a famous groupie.
And in 1973, Hamzy was name-checked in Grand Funk Railroad's We're an American Band, with lyrics mentioning a trip to Little Rock where the band experienced, quote, "Sweet, sweet Connie doing her act."
I said, yeah, I'll have to see it to believe it.
Throughout the 70s, 80s, and beyond, Hamzy romanced members of Eagles, Van Halen, The Who, Led Zeppelin, Kiss, the Allman Brothers, ZZ Top, and more. When she wasn't hanging out with rock bands as they rolled through town, Hamzy worked as a substitute teacher in Little Rock for more than a decade, until the administration got wind of her groupie activities.
I think after a while that the heat was just too much for him.
She claims to have been engaged twice, with the rings to show for it, but never married. Hamzy died in August 2021 at age 66, as reported by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Her cousin, Rita Ann Lawrence, said, "Connie was a character. She was very colorful. She was always in the news." When she was about 16 years old and attending high school in California, Tawny Kitaen joined the world of rock star support systems, moving in with her boyfriend, guitarist Robin Crosby, and serving as a hairdresser and stylist for his band Phenomenon. That group would turn into 80s hair metal band Rat, and Kitaen helped promote the group as the cover model for its first two records, the Rat EP and Out of the Cellar album. Just after Rat found major success, Kitaen and Crosby split up, and she hit the road with Van Halen at the behest of her new boyfriend, the band's tour manager Pete Angelus. Kitaen parlayed her experience posing on rock album covers into posing in rock videos. She factors prominently in the success of Whitesnake, starring in videos for the band's hits including Here I Go Again and Is This Love.
Do you have that on your resume?
Yes, it says Kinski and also Whitesnake Babe.
She'd be briefly married to Whitesnake singer David Coverdale and would give acting a try, notably co-starring in the Tom Hanks movie Bachelor Party and the sitcom The New WKRP in Cincinnati. In May 2021, Kitaen died at home in Newport Beach, California. An autopsy indicated that the groupie-turned-actor died from heart disease triggered by prescription drug abuse and hardened arteries. She was 59. Under a broad definition, Chris O'Dell qualifies as a groupie. While her romantic entanglements with rockers were brief, she was constantly around musicians backstage, at their homes, and in record company offices in her capacity as an employee or manager. Raised in Oklahoma, O'Dell befriended the Beatles' press agent Derek Taylor, who convinced her to move to London in the late 60s after her high school graduation. She landed an office job with the Beatles' self-run company Apple Records, where she earned the trust of Ringo Starr and George Harrison. The latter's 1973 B-side, Miss O'Dell, is an affectionate ode to her. O'Dell helped connect Starr and Harrison with Leon Russell when he was recording an album in London, and she and the pianist became a couple for a while. O'Dell moved in with Russell in California, and he wrote Pisces Apple Lady and Hummingbird about her.
If you saw Leon now, would he have pleasant memories of the relationship?
He would. He would.
When the romance fizzled out, O'Dell returned to London and became a concert tour manager. Over the decades, she's run things on the road for the Rolling Stones, Santana, and Bob Dylan, and has also worked for Fleetwood Mac, Queen, Boston, and the Electric Light Orchestra. She released her memoir Miss O'Dell, Hard Days and Long Nights with the Beatles, the Stones, Bob Dylan, and Eric Clapton and the Women They Loved in 2009. Barbara Cope started attending rock shows in the mid-1960s in Dallas, then spent many years on and off the road as a member of multiple band entourages. Cope entertained a lot of musicians in her late teens and early 20s, and became a legend among major male rock stars due to her speciality. Cope was cryptically known as the Butter Queen because, as Keith Richards says in 33 1/3, The Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street, she did loads of wonderful things with butter. The Butter Queen never divulged the exact details or manner of her method. When she was asked directly in a 1987 interview on The Oprah Winfrey Show, Cope replied, "Those who know, and those who don't wish they did." Cope then added that she'd probably shared her secret with about 2,000 musicians, including members of Traffic, the Beatles, New Riders of the Purple Sage, Led Zeppelin, and the Rolling Stones, who who mentioned heading into Dallas to hang with the Butter Queen in their 1972 song Rip This Joint. Cope retired from the groupie lifestyle in the early 1970s at the age of 22. She lived quietly in Dallas, occasionally attending rock concerts but not participating in backstage activities. In January 2018, the home Cope shared with her mother caught fire. A neighbor tried to rescue both women from the blaze, but he was unable to get to Cope before the flames grew too unwieldy. Cathy Smith abandoned her education at age 16 in 1963, and after catching a band called the Hawks at a Hamilton, Ontario bar, she fell hard for the drummer Levon Helm. The band would rename itself The Band, and Smith would give birth at age 17 to a child she put up for adoption. Helm denied being the father, as Smith had also been involved with Hawks members Rick Dango and Richard Manuel. She left the band's orbit for a personal relationship with married singer-songwriter Gordon Lightfoot and a musical partnership with Hoyt Axton, writing songs and singing backup with his band. While playing with Axton, Smith began taking heroin and cocaine, then moved from fraternizing with celebrities to selling them drugs. Smith played a role in the tragic death of John Belushi. On March 5, 1982, Smith injected the 33-year-old Belushi with a mixture of heroin and cocaine that would kill him. Interviewed by police and then released from custody, Smith would be charged for her role in the comic's death after admitting culpability in an interview. She told the National Enquirer, "I killed John Belushi. I didn't mean to, but I am responsible."
Smith admitted she gave Belushi the drugs, but she said she was not morally responsible for his death.
Rearrested, Smith pleaded guilty to drug and involuntary manslaughter charges. She served 15 months in prison and was deported to Canada upon her parole, where she settled in Maple Ridge, British Columbia, and gave anti-drug diversion lectures. Smith died in 2020 at age 73. At the height of its popularity in 1977, theatrical metal band Kiss released the album Love Gun, which included the track Plaster Caster, a celebration of a woman who utilizes a very hands-on process to make molds of male genitalia.
I realized even from the first meeting that this was a very dedicated artist with a very unique vision.
The song is about artist and rock and roll groupie Cynthia Albritton. While studying art at the University of Illinois in 1968, Albritton went backstage at a Jimi Hendrix concert and asked the guitarist if she could make a plaster mold of his main reproductive organ. Using dental molding compound, Albritton went on to create reproductions of many male rock stars' erect private parts, including members of Journey, the Dead Kennedys, and the MC5. She kept up her sexually charged art practice for decades and would later show off her work in a documentary and at gallery shows. Albritton ultimately retired back home to Chicago and died in April 2022 at the age of 74. While some groupies desire to be around famous men, Pennie Lane, whose real name was Penny Trumbull, just plain loved everything about rock music. She was the leader of a groupie collective that called themselves the Flying Garter Girls, who enjoyed the music and company of many major bands of the early 70s.
Groupies sleep with rock stars because they want to be near someone famous. We're here because of the music. We are Band-Aids.
In 1974, Trumbull realized that 3 years of tour life was enough, and at the age of 20 returned to her hometown of Portland. She enrolled at California State University Northridge, her tuition fully paid for through a fencing scholarship. Trumbull worked in marketing in California, fitting in a 10-year marriage along the way. She opened Penny Lane, a lamb farm on an island outside of Portland, as well as a winery. When filmmaker Cameron Crowe turned his experiences as a teenage music journalist in the early 1970s into the 2000 movie Almost Famous, he based the character of Penny Lane, the enchanting groupie or self-styled Band-Aid, portrayed by Kate Hudson, on his old friend Trumbull.
We are not groupies.
This is Penny Lane, man. Show some respect.
According to Crowe, production studio DreamWorks gave Trumbull a handsome sum for her life rights, which she planned to use to establish a retirement home for rock musicians. Upon her high school graduation, Bebe Buell moved from her hometown in Virginia to New York City and found work as a model. Living a fast-paced life in an entertainment capital granted her access to rock stars. The first 4 men she dated were all prominent male musicians: David Bowie, Iggy Pop, Mick Jagger, and Todd Rundgren. The latter relationship went long-term, both professionally and personally. They wrote songs together, and Rundgren connected Buell with the photographer who would capture the images for her 1974 Playboy Playmate of the Month pictorial. Years into her partnership with Rundgren, Buell met Aerosmith's Steven Tyler, and when Rundgren was on tour in 1976, they had an affair. 9 months later, Buell gave birth to a daughter, actor and model Liv Tyler. He realized at age 11 that Rundgren wasn't her father, but Tyler was. Once Liv was born, Buell moved from the periphery of the rock world into the creative forefront. Beginning in 1981, she released a string of singles and albums, including Covers Girl, Gargoyle, Bored Baby, Sugar, and Bearing It All. Perhaps the quintessential groupie of the 1960s and 1970s, Pamela Des Barres' place in rock history is known to millions because she's built her professional life upon her recollections of making friends, making music, and getting intimate with some of the 20th century's musical luminaries. Hanging out on Los Angeles' rock club-heavy Sunset Strip, DeBar cozied up to plenty of rock stars. Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page and the Rolling Stones' Mick Jagger competed for her affections, and she also enjoyed a close relationship with The Who's Keith Moon. By 1969, she'd moved into music herself, and Miss Pamela, as she was known, became the central figure in the GTOs, a rock group assembled by Frank Zappa and populated entirely by LA groupies.
Rock gods were walking the earth here. Rock gods filled this room. And that will never happen again.
From 1977 to 1991, DeBar was married to Michael DeBar of the glam rock bands Silverhead and Detective, and she reinvented herself as a storyteller and chronicler of rock history with an emphasis on the groupie experience. She's since been published multiple times. I'm With the Band, Confessions of a Groupie, and Take Another Little Piece of My Heart, A Groupie Grows Up, just to name a few. She also hosts the Pajama Party podcast, where she interviews veteran musicians and fellow former scenesters, runs workshops for women writers, and conducts tours of Los Angeles' rock history hotspots.